G'day everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Arts and Models. We're going to try something a little bit different today. So I have got myself a new toy. This is a microphone, and I thought I'd do a quick video on the classic Panther from Tamiya. So you would have seen my little Zimmerit tutorial on that, and we're just working on that now. So I'm going to go through, we're going to show you how we did most of the Zimmerit, show you how I've built the tank and painted the tank, and also how to do a base. So as you can see, sanding, sanding, sanding. Right, so we're just starting on the scribing. As you'll see in the tutorial, doing scribing tool. Now I wanted the kit to really look like the Zimmerit was mostly hastily field applied. So the hull I went to a little bit more detail with, and a little bit more precision, and I wanted the turret to look really rough and not applied very well at all. Now I left those gaps there in the Zimmerit for where the markings are, and I referenced those off a photo for another vehicle. It was actually at Kursk, I believe. So it might be nice to do that. They actually had all the areas where all the markings were sprayed. Didn't have any Zimmerit on it, believe it or not. It was all boxed out like you see it there. So just going through the process. Just wanted a bit of a different pattern on the crew hatch on the back of the turret. And just referencing a book, I just noticed that there really wasn't a grab handle on top of the cupola hatch, so I had a spare one in the kit. I couldn't see it in the instructions anywhere, and there was no placement marks, but we just took the spare one out and whacked it on there. And as I was saying, I wanted a hastily sort of field applied pattern, and you can see there that's a Yag Panther in the background with a square pattern placed on it, and I wanted to sort of replicate that, but I didn't want to do it anywhere near the same level of precision. Just use a bit of the tape here for a bit of a guide just on the curved areas. It works quite well. And continuing on with the same pattern. Alright, just when you're checking your instructions, don't forget you've got to take the teeth off the idler wheel at the back, so the return idler. For some reason on the kit it has teeth on there, not meant to be on there, so I basically just cut them off with a little scalpel. Just mind your thumb, don't cut it like I did. And cut it off with a scalpel, and then I used a metal file to really get back the burrs and sort of tried to go in a circular motion across the surface so I didn't make a flat spot. Not too bad, looking alright. Alright, drilling out the holes for the exhaust. Now basically just use the pin vise as a bit of a starter. So I've only got really small drill bits, so I just use that as a starter, get a guide hole going, and then just open up the hole a little bit with a scalpel. And just make sure you don't go too far and crack it, or anything like that, just be gentle. But it works quite well. Alright, starting with a bit of pre-shading now on the hull. So I want to do all the shadowed areas in black, and that's a NATO black from Tamiya. Really picking up all the panel lines, raised details or lowered details rather, just to try and get it looking pretty neat. Same process of the turret. As you can see, I'm not being really strategic about where I place it. I'm just placing it in all the shadow parts. I'm not too worried about overspray or anything like that. Just getting a coat of paint down. Now you can use a primer over the top of the Zimmerit if you use the Tamiya paste for it, like I have. I generally don't bother. And little natto black I had left, I just sprayed on road wheels, polycaps, as you can see there, and the track system. Alright, coming in for some highlights now. So we're using the Tamiya white, flat white. I'll pretty much apply this to any area that I haven't gone over with the black, or any areas I want to sort of stand out in contrast to. I know most of you know how to do this, but I just really wanted to show it. Okay, coming in now with the sand yellow from Tamiya. So that's what XF60 rather, that's a dark yellow. And I thinned it sort of 50-50, so I really wanted it to be a thin coat over the top so the pre-shading would show through quite well. The beauty of doing it in a thin coat is I can do a couple of applications, so I don't really want to load the model straight off the bat, but I can just do it bit by bit as we go. And you can see there are some areas where, like the rear engine deck there, it really is just a little bit too dark, so I've sort of come back over it a couple of times. Onto the turret. I really do like this technique. I see quite a few people painting the entire thing black. I really don't think you need to. It's a little bit of overkill. I sort of did it on the road wheels because they're small and I really couldn't be bothered picking out details, and anything I can need to do, I can just do it with a heavier coat of the yellow or a lighter coat of the yellow. Now, just to get a slight variation, a little bit of colour modulation between some of the joins and the panels, just grabbed a scrap bit of paper and still using the same yellow, just try to pick up some of the lines. So you can see there it's a subtle effect. I didn't want to do it too heavy because of all the pre-shading I'd already done, but it is a good effect. I quite like it. Moving on to the green camo. So this is the NATO Green XF67 that I used for this coat. Now, I didn't follow any painting guide or anything like that. I just really wanted it randomly applied, sort of in keeping with the field applied Zimmerit and everything like that. Just really wanted it to be, you know, made up. Once again, using a bit of paper as a mask so I don't get a heap of overspray up on that surface there. I didn't really bother about it on this side. I was quite happy. Now really the dark green wouldn't go right into the turret ring like that normally, but meh, it's my tank, I'll do what I want. So I'm only going to be using the dark green, no red brown on this one. Now when I removed the turret, I did get a bit of overspray that I really wasn't expecting underneath the turret. So you probably won't see it in this video. I think I'm pretty certain I've edited it out, but I just went back up and touched it up with some dark yellow. And just randomly applied some of the green to some of the road wheels. And as you can see here on the barrel, I use a very complicated masking technique to stop from spraying on the rest of the tank. Alright, applying the decals. By this stage I've given the whole model a coat of Tamiya clear gloss. And basically just put the decals in and soften them down with a bit of mark softer. The decals that come with the kit are excellent. They're very thin, but they're quite strong as well, so they're very forgiving and they can form well to surface shapes. So where that one is now, on the side there's a weld seam on the hull, and that decal just sat down beautifully inside that detail, so it looks really nice. On the pictures I was referencing, the crosses weren't total, so there was a little bit of overlap towards the front of the vehicle, and a little bit of the cross was missing. So I decided I could cut it beforehand, but I really wanted to lay it down first and just see how the decals would perform, and then just trim it to shape a little later. And they were beautiful. They worked really, really well. Get rid of any little bit of excess. Don't want it sticking to the model. There we go, and those clear spots on the turret that you saw earlier where there was no Zimmerit. You can see how brutal I am with these things. Half of them I use my fingers or the scalpel or whatever. It's just, you know, they were really, really tough, really strong, but yet went down beautifully. Now the instructions call out for this marking to be in a different position, so the high left, but because I've left that spot on the turret based on the photo, I put it down the bottom right. And just using some Tamiya German grey here for the rubber on the road wheels. I don't want to do black because it's just going to look too stark, so I'll just do that. Now once I've finished all those, I coat it with clear again, and then I start some of the weathering process. Now that's the Tamiya, what do they call it? Tamiya Panelline Accent Colour Black. Now I didn't want it to be really heavily weathered, so I put it on and basically removed most of it straight away, and you can see the difference there. Positioning the road wheels can be a little bit fiddly. Now you can see there I've got some with green on them, others without. Now the front and rear road wheels are on essentially like a torsion bar system on the kit. So there's a bit of plastic that runs from front to back. I really suggest locking those in as soon as you can, just to stop them from shifting, and just make sure you get any slack out of it, like you'll see here. See? Okie dokie, once again with the NATO Black, just painting some of the spare tracks that are on the side of the tank. We'll go over those some other colours in a second. So once I painted them black, I went over them with a tiny bit of Panzer Ace's Vallejo Dark Rust. Sort of just streaked them up a little bit with that. And then also used Model Air Rust from Vallejo. Now, that's obviously meant to be airbrushed, but it brushes on quite well as well. I didn't really want to give it a heavy effect, so I just tried to keep it light. Alright, just using the German grey again to tidy up some of the tools on the tank. I wanted a lot of them to look like they've been sprayed in position, but the spade and axe, whatnot, I used the Tamiya grey on. And we've got NATO Black once more, just on the exhausts. And whilst that's drying, I start moving on to some weathering on the tank. Now I don't want it heavily weathered, as we were saying earlier, so I sort of let it run into the recesses and then wipe up the excess. But I really do love this Tamiya enamel wash. I used to make up all the washes myself, and it's actually quite nice not having to do it anymore. So just wanted a little bit in the cracks there, just to help that detail stand out. And you can see how roughly I've done the Zimmerit on the turret. It's nothing like the hull. And I've really tried to make it look a bit hodgepodge. Alright, engine deck. It really is one of my favourite parts of building armour. It's just messing around with it and making it all dirty and a bit of fun. Now I either remove this with the cotton bud, as you can see, or with a bit of tissue for areas that I can't get the cotton bud into. Just comes up nice and easily. You can let it dry before you do this if you really want to heavier weather it, but I just, as I was saying, want to keep it light, so I did it all when it was mostly wet. Now just go back over some of the surfaces with the cotton bud dipped with a bit of turpentine just to get up any loose bits. I wanted a bit of chipping effect on the Zimmerit, as I would have shown in the other video. So typically when Zimmerit was applied, it was applied over the red oxide primer. It's not really the case in this one because it was meant to be applied in the field, but I just love the effect, so I went, yeah, we're going to do it anyway. Alright, and that was a red-brown from Model Air 2, I believe. Okay, so just working on the exhaust here. I use a combination of burnt umber, Model Air, rust by Model Air, and what we've got, Panzer Ace's dark rust as well. And then the very last step, I use Panzer Ace's light rust. And basically just apply it to the top and then just sort of stipple it down. There you go, there's the light rust. So you can see what I'm doing there. I'm just sort of spreading it across the surface. It's easy to remove. If you put too much on, just clean the brush and wipe it off again with the brush. It's very simple, but it just gives you a nice little modulated effect. Okay, come back and do a little bit more. Looking good. Well, I think it is anyway. Moving on, just washing the back there, getting rid of a little bit of cotton bud that got stuck to the model. So applying the washers, wiping them off as we go, and you can see there the decal number of the vehicle and the cross is just set down over that raised detail beautifully. Alrighty, time for some pigments. So I've done the washes on all these wheels, and I'll start using Vallejo pigments on the hull and the wheels and tracks and things like that to bring the vehicle a bit more to life, I suppose to say, make it look like it's been running around the field. I'll start off with dark red ochre from Vallejo, and then move to the burnt umber as well. Now you can use a pigment fixer. Actually, it's probably better to use a pigment fixer to get this to stay on the model. All I used was Tamiya X20A thinner, so they're acrylic thinner, and I find it softens it up a little bit. It'll tend to stick to the model quite well, and as long as you're not handling it a heck of a lot, it's going to stay there. But you can see all I'm doing is loading the brush with thinner, just putting it on there, and then wiping clear some spots where I think I've got a little bit too much, or not. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now once I do that, I basically just sprinkle on some MIG pigments, so a bit of Europe dust and a little bit of dry mud as well. Actually, probably a little bit more dry mud than Europe dust. And then use the same method to fix that. Areas where I think it's just too heavy or I haven't got the right effect, whilst the thinner is wet, it's really easy to remove with either the brush, or like a clean brush, or just a cotton bud once more. There we go. So try and clean it off most of the road wheels, like on the flat surface of the road wheel. But on the outside surface, I try to leave it there just to dust it up a bit. And for the hull and the turret, I didn't use any of the layer ones. I just used the meat pigment Europe dust and dry mud again. You can see here I sort of sprinkled on a little bit too heavy on the front here. I'm not happy with the effect. So I get a wet brush with Tamiya thinner and just brush down some of the surface details just to remove a bit of excess. And, really love the effect. Chipping, one of my favourite parts again. So basically with the chipping, I used two methods. I used Panzer Ace's Dark Rust again, and I used a little bit of Light Rust as well, and some model colour Hull Red, just in a few areas. The Light Rust was very minimal, so you really won't notice that. I didn't want to apply it with a sponge because it was just going to look too heavy for the look that I was going for, so just picked out little areas with the brush, sort of raised areas. You can imagine people getting on off the vehicle or stuff like that. Now some people do the chipping before they apply pigments, some people do it after, some people do both. It's really up to you, modeller's choice. The beauty of using these is when I apply a little bit too much, you can see I just wipe it off with a clean brush. Or my finger in that case. Okay, when I was using the scribing tool, I scratched some of the panel there, getting a little bit overzealous and dragging it down a bit too far. Now I was going to fix it, but I thought, you know what, it'll probably actually look good for a bit of chipping, and so I used the dark rust on that, and I reckon it looks fantastic. More chipping on the engine deck, where you're going to have a lot of crew working. The Panthers, when they first came out, were not awfully reliable, so it wasn't uncommon to see them being towed or to see them being worked on. Now you can see there's no engine grills, no photo edge grills. I really wanted to build this kit with the exception of the Zimmerit straight out of the box. The only thing I didn't end up using on the kit was the tow cables. You really meant to be able to heat them and bend them and put them in position, but they were just too brittle, to be honest. So I put them in pretty much boiling water just to try and to make them malleable, and just wouldn't work. So I left those off for the time being. I'll probably replace those further on down the road. Really like how the back of the tanks come up with the whole red at the bottom there. Alright, using a graphite pencil, it's a 3B graphite pencil. I'll just go in and run over some of the edges and add a little bit of a sheen to some parts where the paint might have worn recently but it hasn't rusted yet. I use the same technique on the tracks once I've applied those, but yeah, just put little bits here and there, and it just sort of catches the eye in the right light. I love the effect. Now you can use just about any graphite pencil you want. I chose the 3B because the 3Bs tends to be a bit softer than something like a HB and certainly than 2H, so it's a bit more forgiving, a bit easier to lay down, you don't have to push it as hard. So yeah, I usually use the 3 or 4B. Let's not forget the cupola. A few tiny little scratches on the barrel there. Now the barrel in the kit is actually quite good. Me being clumsy, after I finished it and I sanded it and everything and got it all nice and round, I actually broke it in two and was able to fix it, and you can't tell, so it's quite forgiving. That wasn't the kit's fault, that was totally my fault. Alright, just applying some of the MIG pigments to the tracks now. Pretty much I'll just save a lot of the excess from this and use that later on as well. Same process as with the tank. Apply the pigments to the tracks front and back, and then use the Tamiya thinner to lay it down. Alright, I really didn't have any problems gluing the tracks together at all. Even though they're the vinyl tracks, I didn't get any issues. You can see it there, I'm just using the close pegs and the Tamiya bottles there just to keep it at the right level, because you want to glue the tracks down to the top of the road wheels, and you just want it sort of touching the second road wheel. I didn't even end up needing to use the 4 little spokes they've got on the back of the tracks, so you sort of melt them down. You can melt them with just a hot piece of metal like a screwdriver or something, heat up a screwdriver and then sort of press them down. I didn't even need to do that. They just bonded really well. It was, in case anyone's wondering, it was Insecure Bob Smith Industries that I ended up using for that, and it set within a couple of minutes. It was fantastic. Just using the pencil once more over some of the raised areas on the tracks, just to sort of give it a bit of a shine to it. And you can see there, just when the light catches it, it sort of stands out really well. And it's not an overly heavy effect like painting them silver would be. It's quite subtle. Alright, this is my really expensive chalk that I got on sale at the art store. So very, very cheap. Just a chalk pastel, and run the brush along it and use it for a bit of shading. On the back of the engine deck here now, I'm adding some oil stains. Now it's actually a Tensichrome oil, life colour. Just put a few little dots on the back there, and spray the whole model, give it a quick dust coat with Tamiya buff, and then cover the whole thing with a flat clear as well, just so it's not as shiny. Now for a kit that's 40 years old, I absolutely love how it's come up. Just moving on to a base. I didn't want to do an elaborate diorama or anything like that. Just thought we'd do a nice, quick, easy base just to help show the model off a little bit. I just got a picture frame, poured some plaster into it. You can see me scraping off the excess there onto the tape that I've put around the side. Once that's dry, remove the tape. Just peel it back so you get nice crisp edges and replace it with some other tape as well, so you're not working over an area that's going to be removed. And I was going to put in some fence posts and things like that. I've sort of left it like that at the moment. I don't know, I might replace them with a tree or something, some small trees or something, or I haven't quite made up my mind, but you can see here just cutting a little hole in the plaster to stick those in. It's just bits of balsa that I use. There's a couple of rocks there from our backyard. Right, so I'll give it a spray with dark yellow XF60 from Tamiya again. And I'll do it quite thin once more, and I'll go over it a couple of times just to try and get all the little air bubbles and little spots in it. Once I did that, I used Model Air Burnt Umber around the edges, sort of like off the track, so you can see it there. I tried a new method for making track prints, and I thought I'd show it to you anyway. I sort of did it the wrong way around, but yeah, I wasn't real happy with it. So the idea is you make your track width there with a PVA, sprinkle some soil over it. This is just soil from the backyard once again. Sprinkle some soil over it, and then you push the tank down into it to sort of conform to the shape. It didn't really work, so I'm just going to go back to the old method of putting it into the plaster, I think. Might give it another try, see how we go. Yeah, go up on that. So pretty much just cover the rest of the base, and because I've done the tracks first, I miss a few little areas which I'll touch up in a minute. Alright, see it there, scrape the loose stuff off, and I'm just applying it PVA to the little areas that I haven't covered properly. So it's just regular old white glue, wood glue, nothing special. Alright, there it is, cleaned it up again, replaced the sides again, the tape on the sides rather again, just to make it nice and neat. I sort of cover the whole thing with a bit of dark yellow once more, sort of blend it, and then there's a bit of that's actually a red brown, Model Air red brown. Alright, thought we'd try some Joe Fix stuff, so I bought a few things off Joe Fix recently. I thought, yeah, now's a good time to use them. So we've got these grass tufts and leaves that we use, and one of my friends supplied me with some dyed ground cover. Now basically it's, if I understand correctly, it is kitty litter and wood shavings, so like sawdust, and he's just stained them, and it actually comes up quite well. It's very easy to apply. Just a bit of weak PVA, so thin it sort of 50-50 with water, PVA glue, and sprinkle that over the top of it, push it down and shake off whatever is loose. But you can also do it like I'm doing here. I've got a slightly different colour, and I'm just sort of sprinkling it over the top here, and then I get the 50-50 mix and just dab it on with a brush, like a loaded brush, dab it on the surface so it runs everywhere, and once that's dry, that's going to hold everything in place just as well. So it will dry clear too, so don't worry if you've thinned it. You're not going to see like an opaque surface or a foggy surface. There you go, it's nice and clear. And we're just sticking down some of the Joe Fix tufts. You can see some in the foreground there, and I'm just placing the ones in the background. That little set is actually quite good, it's got quite a few different varieties in there. And I sparingly place some leaves on as well now. I just used regular PVA, dabbed it on, and applied the leaves directly to it essentially. Just sort of wanted a scattering of those around. You can see I really haven't worked on the fence at all. I haven't quite decided whether I liked it or not, or whether I was going to change it. So I've just left it as it is for now. Alright, this is the MIG pigments once again. This is all the leftovers that I had from doing the tracks, so I just scooped them up, put them in a little bottle cap, and spread them over the base. Once I've done with that, I actually airbrush a bit of the Tamiya X28 thinner over the top of them again, and that'll just help it sit onto the base. Blends it in a little bit too. Using the same sprinkle effect. There we go. So you get a little bit comes off when you airbrush it, but yeah, no biggie. Now it may look a little bit darker there. It really doesn't change the tone of it at all. It just helps it settle down. Rightio, so removing the tape for one final time. I get a little bit that gets stuck at the bottom there. I'll show you how to remove that in a second, but you still get nice clean edges along the side of the frame, so it looks really good. I like it. And just use a scalpel. If a bit gets stuck to the base like that, just use a scalpel to remove it along the edge. Alrighty, and there we go. There's the completed kit. So just going to show you a couple of photos of the classic Tamiya Panther. I love this kit. It went together really well. I hope you like the video and you like the new style. Let us know what you think. Let us know what your thoughts are. Do you like this or not? I know the music on this is just some classical music because it was actually quite long. It was a lot longer than I intended. So hopefully you liked it. Please give us a thumbs up or a comment. And yeah, stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.